It's Thursday, the 1st of September 2016. I am Robin Yellow, and this is Techtasm episode 29. Le taxman mange un apple. And with me one more time again is Senor James Woodall.
Mr. Yellow, how was your holiday? It's been a while.
It was. I was in my evil Caribbean lair.
Okay, good.
And we did actually try to record a show last week, didn't we? But it didn't quite work out.
Internet wasn't really in our favour, I don't think, on that day.
No. Well, apparently at that time of the day, the pipes out there get clogged up for a good couple of hours while everybody, watches YouTube and checks their Facebook feed. So, unfortunately, the timings just didn't work. The internet wasn't good enough. It's not good enough, James.
Well, yeah, clearly planning. We need better planning.
Exactly. That's my fault. Sorry. Now, this week, James and I will be looking at some stories over the last couple of weeks, actually. We'll be looking at Apple's Euro tax, Samsung's Tizen watch again, and Amazon's Dash button. And we'll be judging these stories and a couple of others to determine whether they are a Techtasm, which is a blend of tech for technology and tasm for phantasm, something that exists only in a person's mind. So without further evil intro, let's get on with the show.
Okay, well, let's kick off with the Apple tax. Obviously, it's been in the news the last couple of days. Reading here in the BBC by unnamed Journo Droid, BBC.
Oh, unnamed Journo Droid. I love his work.
It's really great. He writes so many articles. It's amazing. Basically, everybody is coming out saying that this tax is unfair. And just to kind of rewind a little bit, it's appeared that Ireland has been offering Apple a very generous corporation tax of what the EU claims, so the EC, the European Commission, claims to be effectively 1% of tax on its profits between 2003 and 2014. And effectively, Apple must pay Ireland back 13 billion euros, or the equivalent of 11 billion pounds today. Interestingly enough, Ireland, who will be the beneficiary of this tax payment, is rejecting it. And of course,
that was
Apple.
just bizarre. The Irish government, who offered the tax break in the first place, who will benefit to the tune of 11 billion pounds, don't want it.
That's
what is wrong with them?
Well, I think, to be honest, if they accepted it, it would open the door for other companies to be found out, let's say like Google, Dell, Microsoft, all these other big Silicon Valley players that have Irish European offices, because they have a very generous tax rate anyway. And what that may cause is those companies to then start leaving Ireland, because even though Apple were paying, let's say, 1% of tax on corporation tax, let's not forget they were still paying all the employment tax and all the estate taxes and everything else that goes with being a company in a country.
Yes, but I think in this particular case, their headquarters had no employees, no offices. It was literally just on paper.
Apple does have a huge presence in...
Oh, no, it does. Yeah, no,
and Google
that's true.
Certainly has a huge presence in Ireland, and Microsoft definitely does. So perhaps, though, even if that was the case for that being for Apple, maybe they're doing it. Maybe the Irish are being slightly hesitant because they don't want the other companies to jump ship.
Well, the reason they are there, of course, is because the local government, the Irish government, is very supportive of foreign companies and offers these kind of tax breaks to bring large companies into what is a relatively small company. Now, what's happened here as part of Ireland's membership of the European Union is that to keep a level playing field and make sure everything is fair across the union, they've obviously decided this constitutes an illegal subsidy to the company, even though they're not, Irish companies, they're foreign companies, but it's an illegal subsidy, and therefore it's not allowed. And if it's not allowed, they've clearly gone back in time. I think Tim Cook described it as rewriting history and called it, quotes, political crap to actually describe what was going on. But clearly the European Commission wants to send a message that the day it's over for, these kind of Irish-Dutch double sandwich tax deals are finished now, and you cannot sell stuff into the European Union without paying an appropriate amount of tax.
And look, on the face of it, that's absolutely fine. But let's not forget what Apple was doing was legal, in the sense that, or certainly they believed it to be legal. But just to put this into, 13 billion euro, that's a big number. That equates to the entire Irish healthcare budget, 66% of its social welfare bill, 15 million iPhones, or, and this is probably the thing that will sting the most, 27% of Apple's 2015 profit.
Nice.
So Apple have been...
but it has been accumulated over 11 years, hasn't it?
Absolutely. This is gonna sting. I mean, look, this is not the end of the story. There will be appeals beyond appeals, and it will probably be whittled down for maybe 1 billion or something, which of course is still a big number.
Well, certainly it'll be an appeal, and it will run for another couple of years. So there's no immediate outcome of this. But let me ask you this, James. Do you believe it is the job of corporations to pay a responsible amount of tax when they clearly are underpaying tax on their business in the European Union here? Or do you believe it is the role of the sovereign state to set the tax rate and for companies to operate legally within that? Which is your preferred bias?
I have to say, I think it's the latter. Of course, it's in the corporation's interest to not pay a lot of tax. I mean, their primary, as we've discussed in previous episodes, the goal of a corporation is to look after their shareholders.
Yeah, but that's 1% tax they were paying. Their corporation tax rate in Ireland is 12.5%.
Absolutely. So therefore,
they're paying 1% tax. Or in the final year, I think it was 0.05%.
So it's the responsibility of the Irish government to enforce their own tax laws. I mean, if you're not enforcing the tax laws and you're letting them get away with it, then they'll get away with it because, Apple may have more of a conscience than other companies. But at the end of the day, they're still running a business, and you don't get to be the world's most valuable company by...
Second most valuable.
Okay, so second most... Is Google now still...
No, Alphabet is, but yeah, it was the world's most valuable company for a year and a half.
Yeah, sure. And let's not forget, Google will be part of this story as well, because they are doing exactly the same things as Apple are doing. But it is the responsibility of the Irish government to enforce their own tax laws because, well...
Yeah, so a deal was done. So you and I both know, James, that when your tax burden gets above a certain point, it becomes a negotiation. I mean, that's the way it works in every jurisdiction. There are rules, there are things that you can do, and as you become more and more valuable to the economy of a country, you can start calling the shots a little bit more because your departure or withdrawal would have such a financial impact that the tax authority has to judge that in terms of the tax take.
Yes.
Now, there's a well-known law which says the more you put up tax, the less people will actually pay it. The lower the tax, the more people will pay it, but the lower the take is. So there's a kind of sweet spot. And clearly in Ireland, they've got the problem that, it's not a problem, but part of their mission is to encourage companies to bring jobs to Ireland and to bring business to Ireland. And one of the ways of doing that is by flexing the tax in a certain direction. But come on, 1%?
Yeah, absolutely. But I still believe the Irish government has done well from this because of all the people who get employed by Apple in Ireland and whatever else. I mean, there would be more than, say, the UK. Hey, look. This is going to go round and round. And I have to say, I've got a correction for you. Apple is more valuable than Google today.
Oh, is it? Well,
Apple,
fiddlesticks.
573 billion, Google, 534.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to call this one, James, if you don't mind.
Please do.
I'm going to call it a taxtasm.
A taxtasm, oh dear.
You like that? You having some of that?
Yeah, that clearly means nothing. So, yeah, well done. Good.
Well, look, moving on to Mac rumors, and reported this week that Samsung have unveiled, I presume at IFA 2016 in Germany today, the new Gear S3 smartwatch with GPS and LTE. Now, just ahead of Apple's planned September the 7th event, Samsung unveiled its new watch, coming in two varieties, the Classic with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and the Frontier model that features LTE support. Now, what's brilliant about everything that Samsung makes is the wonderful Super AMOLED displays that they have, and the S3 watch has this feature, and the inclusion of S3 in the watch. But something which I'd like your opinion on, James, is the fact that they are using Tizen to power this thing, not Android Wear. What's going on?
Well, they've invested so much in Tizen, they have to use it for something, right? I think we're all in agreement that Tizen on smartphones is dead. Nothing has happened, right, on that front, unless I'm missing something.
I don't think so. I think TouchWiz was an attempt to abstract an interface from the operating system behind it so that they could use Tizen on their phones. Now, that strategy failed, and the promised Tizen smartphone, initially with a launch in Russia last year, never materialized. But Tizen's found its home now in watches. Now, what's good about Tizen on a watch or otherwise?
Well, what's good about it is Samsung has complete control over it. So I don't think it's anything to do with the fact that it's Tizen. I think it's just the fact that they've got an operating system that they can use. Android Wear OS has some very strict requirements that they would have to adhere to. So,
yeah, there is no flex in Android Wear whatsoever, is there? You have to take the vanilla product.
Yeah, exactly. So the fact that it's Tizen, I think, is completely irrelevant. Interestingly enough, 2 points really. The fact the timing of the launch, I mean, let's be honest, they are not going to dampen any hype that Apple will get from the next watch at all. But interestingly enough, on the flip side, the second generation Apple Watch is rumored to not include LTE. So, yeah, that's interesting.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, the LTE, of course, is going to be a power sapping chip in there, and it's only got a 380 milliamp hour battery. It says it's able to last up to 4 days between charges. That's pretty impressive. It obviously means they've totally optimized the OS for battery life. But yeah, LTE, I mean, you're going to have that thing on for 5 minutes and it's going to kill it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, being a regular Apple Watch user, my Apple Watch at this second is on 59% battery, and I took it off charge at 6 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, didn't do anything with it all day. But
no, but that's it though. I think, but I guess this gets into a wider question. I didn't do anything with my watch today. Are smartwatches here to stay?
I don't know. I think it's bigger than a niche, smaller than mass adoption. You use it. I know people that use smartwatches. Maybe 5% of the people that I know use them, and the people that do use them absolutely love them. It is great for notifications. It does save battery on your main phone.
This is true. It does.
And it gives you that discrete notification, which is helpful in a busy work context. But again, bigger than a niche, smaller than a mass adoption thing. So I don't know. What do you think? Smartwatches in general, Techtasm, yes, no?
Smartwatches are real. I mean, I use them. I love my smartwatch. I think you have to be of a certain tech mindset to want to put up with it.
Okay. And what about Samsung's S3 watch, Techtasm?
No, I think we'll fade. It'll disappear. I think Apple, from what I understand, have sold more smartwatches than all the others combined. So I think the Gear S3 will just disappear. I mean, well done for Samsung for bringing it out, but who cares?
Okay, well, look, let's move on to an article in The Independent from Andrew Griffin talking about Amazon launching buttons which let you order things without ever opening the computer. Now, Amazon has just launched the Dash button in the UK, which lets you buy things by just pressing a button. It's a small Wi-Fi enabled gadget. We've spoken about the Dash button before. They can be placed around the house and they correspond with a specific product. And when the button is pressed, Amazon charge you and bring one of whatever you click the button of to your house. Now, there's going to be 40 brands at launch, including Durex condoms, always useful, Gillette Listerine, Olay Right Guard, and various others. So, it's sort of your fast-moving consumer goods, aerosols, deodorants, soap powders, that sort of thing. The device itself costs £5. but you are given a £5 credit, and you have to be part of Amazon Prime to use it. Now, coming to the UK must mean it's been a success in the US, doesn't it, James?
Yeah, it must be. And I think the best example that I saw on one of the promotional pictures was the Ariel washing powder button on the washing machine itself. That is brilliant. Because you can imagine it, you're doing the washing, you've run out of powder, you don't have to write it down anywhere, whatever, you just tap it there and then. It's in the moment. I mean, how many times have you said to yourself, oh, I must remind myself to do X, and you forget?
Well, Jorrit van der Meulen, Vice President at Amazon EU, has said that the Dash button gives you the convenience of one-click ordering in your home, and with Dash replenishment, they're taking one step further to enabling connected appliances to automatically reorder supplies on your behalf.
And that's clearly the next step. I mean, that is the logical step. I mean, why not, rather than charging your customers £5, get your manufacturers to
Yeah, well, they've been talking to Samsung printers, Grundig, Whirlpool washing machines, and these could all potentially have this functionality built into them, or possibly just, the button. In the same way, for example, that Chromecast and Chromecast audio can be built into a TV or built into a speaker set or amplifier. This is part of this Internet of Things doohickey, isn't it?
It's brilliant. It's really great to see a good use for new technology.
Well, do you know what occurs to me, James, is I wonder what everyone else is doing, because all the news in retail is from Amazon.
Yeah, this is true.
Who else is there?
Tesco.
Exactly. I mean, there is nobody. There used to be a few, companies like Jungle.
Yeah, what happened to Jungle?
I don't know, they evaporated, didn't they? After they screwed a load of VC money out of whoever and then disappeared. Who is it? What's the big one in Hull? eBuyer. They're quite good, aren't they, for tech products? But again, they don't do everything. They just do one particular thing very well. I
fell out with eBuyer because I'm going back a few years now. They required, in some circumstances, that the delivery address was the same as your billing address. And that doesn't always work.
No, it doesn't always work. And as you say, Amazon's algorithms for working out whether they trust you are far more sophisticated than some other vendors. And also, you got to remember, Amazon's returns policy is absolute ledge, isn't it?
Oh, it is. In fact, my wife yesterday had an email from them because she sent something back and got the money immediately, and they complained to say they hadn't received it. Well, fortunately, my wife had the tracking number and sent it to them, and they apologized profusely, and everything's fine, and whatever else.
It's funny. My wife got an email from Amazon, and she had returned something. She returned something which wasn't what she ordered. Basically, it was one of those things which was sold by somebody else and fulfilled by Amazon, and she returned it. Anyway, she got an automatic email saying, you've returned an excessive amount of things. Can you please explain what's going on here? They were basically challenging her. She'd obviously some algo had identified her as somebody who just bought stuff and then returned it, or returned it and it didn't come back to them, because the item was mistaken. It was sent to her, but it was the wrong thing.
Okay.
So when she returned it, the person who inspected it obviously saw that it wasn't the thing that it was supposed to be, and this flagged something on her account. She got quite a snotty email from them. It's the first time I've seen the halo slip, I must admit, on the Amazon customer service. But normally it's fantastic.
Oh, brilliant. But real or Techtasm, this is a real.
Well, listen, I'll tell you, before we move on to the next story, it seems to me, I was thinking the other day, there are three companies in the world, aren't there? There are Apple, there is Google, and there is Amazon, and there is a big gap to anybody else. They literally, one's got shopping sewn up, the other's got TV and entertainment sewn up, and the other's got online services sewn up. And you think between them, they seem to be unassailable. I wonder in a few years' time, James, whether it'll be the same, because all of those three companies, perhaps with the exception of Apple, are less than 20 years old. Yeah,
this is true. And to be fair, you could argue that Apple is less than 20 years old because they were reinvented with the Microsoft money in '97. So
yes, that's true.
They're all
true. I think hell of a lot can change in not just a lifetime, but a part of a lifetime. And it seems that the cadence with which these gigantic companies arise, dominate, and then disappear seems to be speeding up. It used to be 100 years, 200 years, and now it's down to 10 or 20 years. I just wonder in a few years' time whether it'll be the same.
Yeah. Okay. Well, interesting stuff. Moving on. Joey Elijah Snedden in OMG Chrome, you can't make this up, can you? Has reported that at IFA, another IFA story, Lenovo have introduced a tablet, but it lacks a physical keyboard. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But it's got like I guess like a printed keyboard. Okay. With a stylus. And the idea being that using a virtual keyboard, they can add in gesture sensing, and it can be a graphics tablet, and all these things in one by molding the keyboard into doing lots of different things.
So let me just get this clear. It's effectively two tablets.
Yeah.
And when you're using it, one of the tablets has got a keyboard on it.
Yes. It's a backlit virtual keyboard. And
hold on a minute. So it's backlit. So the actual keyboard is etched onto a glass panel.
That's how it looks in the pictures, yeah. So it's etched into there. But the advantage being that because it is a complete touchpad, you can use it as a drawing surface as well.
Oh. And which is this Windows?
It's Windows 10 or Android 6, okay, which is interesting, and hey, both of those. But they are touting that a Chromebook version is coming.
Ooh. So
it's really, really, really interesting. They're calling it the Yoga Chromebook, the one that's coming out later on. And supposedly they've spent 2 years developing the touch panel technology, and it's so advanced for touch that you can even put a sheet of paper on top of the touch panel and still write on it, and it will be detected by the touch panel.
Brilliant. Well, look, I tell you, Lenovo have got a fantastic track record in innovating around tablets, haven't they? With the original Yoga, which I think was the first tablet to flip round to flip the keyboard round. So interesting to see. There's a kind of logical development of that. They're quite bold and designy, aren't they? I thought I'd seen it all, but
yeah, definitely.
This looks great. I wonder what it feels like just sort of typing on a flat piece of glass.
Well, it's weird actually. I mean the virtual keyboards have been around for a while. I'm sure you've seen the ones where they project a keyboard onto a surface.
I've seen it, but I've never used it.
They're actually really uncomfortable because there's no tactile feedback, and that's actually really important.
Yes.
So I think it will take. Now I only used it in a shop, and it was like five minutes. So hey, and to be fair, actually, it was over 10 years ago. So I'm sure things have moved on since then. But then saying that, how can you move on from a thing that isn't really there?
Does this keyboard have any kind of sort of haptic feedback as you type things, or is there any kind of sensory input that you're at the edge of a key?
It doesn't say so. I mean, to be fair, this article is pretty lacking on information. Basically, it's a nice picture. It's a really nice picture.
Well, I think it looks like a fabulous idea. I just wonder what the effect will be. I mean, time will tell as to whether people are prepared to accept this. But you've got to remember, of course, when the iPhone came out, people did not think that typing on a screen with your thumbs would ever take off. It would be too fiddly. Now you can type and swipe and tap and talk and do all sorts of things, and people are quite comfortable putting reasonably large amounts of content in that way. Remember, of course, I suppose with this kind of device is going to be a second or third device, won't be used for excessive input, used for occasional maybe typing in a URL or doing a bit of IM. You're not going to be writing War and Peace on it, are you?
No, this is true. This is very true. I think the difference, though, between a keyboard on a screen and a keyboard on a separate device is you're looking at the screen as you're typing. And I think by detaching that, because I can type comfortably on a keyboard without looking at my hands, and that just comes from practice of just typing. I think it would be weird having a keyboard that I couldn't see or feel. I don't know. Strange. Interesting enough, that going back to what you said about the smartphone, I remember a certain company called BlackBerry who scoffed at the iPhone when it first came out and said nobody will ever ditch a physical keyboard. So
yeah, you're right. And also, now I'm thinking about this. I don't use it much on my phone, but you can do handwriting in Android, where you can, just do this, just literally write naturally with a hand. And I see a pen in the picture there. You could possibly just write across the keys with a pen in sort of handwriting that is automatically translated.
Yeah, and that's basically the idea. They're able to merge what would be a full-screen touchpad, a full-size touchpad and a keyboard in one. That's effectively what they've done.
Yes, and of course that full-size touchpad will be nice and flat on the surface of your table, your desk, or whatever you're using it on. So it will be much more comfortable for you to use rather than leaning up onto a tablet, which has never been a good experience for input.
Perhaps we could reach out to Lenovo and see if they can loan Techtasm a review unit.
Well, wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see why they wouldn't want to do that. Okay, well, real or Techtasm?
Unfortunately, I think it's a Techtasm. I'm saying that really quickly, James, because the more I think about it, the better it sounds. I just think that tactile feedback of a key is just going to be too much. You're basically physically replacing the layout and size of something with physical buttons and tactile feedback with a flat surface. And I love the thinking, and I think that's why I'm glad this was included in the lineup today, because I think it shows fantastic vision and innovation. But I've got to call this a Techtasm.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Okay, well, final story. This one's been in the news for a few weeks, but obviously we've been out of the loop.
Who's it written by?
Unnamed Journodroid.
Unnamed Journodroid?
Yeah, in the BBC. I mean, as they say, they get around. They write a lot of articles, this Unnamed Journodroid.
This girl can write.
She really can, lightning speed. Well, so we all know that Facebook bought WhatsApp back in 2014 for a ridiculous, but I want to say...
I thought it was 19 unicorns.
It was 19 unicorns.
Nearly 2 decacorns.
Yep, exactly. They lined up their unicorns. Well, it looks like Facebook is finally starting to look at making some money from WhatsApp. I say that because WhatsApp was famous for having an annual service fee that it never actually charged its customers. There was always a way of getting around...
I got charged. I paid $1.
Did you? How many times? Once?
Once.
And you've had WhatsApp...
Not for the first year. I paid it for the second year.
And you've had WhatsApp now for, what, 5-6 years?
Since it came out, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So, I first heard about it in, 2010? So in 6 years, WhatsApp has probably charged its 500 million users, maybe a third of them $1. So, actually, that's still quite a healthy amount of money. Well, anyway, when Facebook bought WhatsApp, they said they were going to scrap that charge. So... certainly the last 2 years, nobody
scrap it. Yeah,
nobody has paid WhatsApp any money. And the question has always been for a very long time, how is Facebook actually going to monetize WhatsApp? Well, here we have it. Facebook has started to say that they're going to have cross-advertising between the Facebook app and the WhatsApp app. So, how do you feel about this? I mean,
well, I'll tell you how I feel about it. I feel fairly cool at the moment because I've gone in and changed the settings to say do not share my information with Facebook.
Okay, actually, I'm going to do that now.
So I've done that. So I'm not too worried right now. And I'm also doubly not worried. I'll tell you why, James.
Yeah.
Because I think we are all whores. And what happens if there's something about a service we don't like, we run in our millions or billions to the next place. So I think IM is such a fundamental and basic thing that people will find a natural way of moving to another service. It was MSN Messenger. Then it was, what was that one on BlackBerry? BB Chat.
BBM.
It was called. BBM, then it was WhatsApp,
Yep.
Then it was, and we don't know what it'll be next. It doesn't matter. It might be the new one from Google, Allo. It's unlikely, but it might be. So I would say I'm not worried on two fronts. One, because I don't think I'm going to see any advertising, and as soon as I do, I'm off. And two, I just think that everybody is the same. They don't want to be advertised to. I mentioned the Google. Have you heard of this? Google Allo.
I think we spoke about it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so Google Allo have got a few handy features. What's interesting about Google Allo is the way they will monetize that is not through direct advertising. What they've done is they've got a bot which will look at what's being said and offer you up at just the right time the appropriate bit of information. If I'm talking to you on this Allo system and we're talking about let's go for a pizza, and it knows I'm in Petersfield and you're in Beaconsfield, it might suggest a pizza joint halfway between Petersfield and Beaconsfield. And for those of you who know where Petersfield and Beaconsfield is, that's a hell of a long drive for both of us, and it probably wouldn't be very nice to probably be on a motorway somewhere. But the idea is that the AI would look at, try to make sense of what you're talking about and what you're asking, and offer you stuff that is genuinely useful based on hypersensitive AI rather than a general advertising algorithm. So I think there is a journeyed direction for IM clients, and I think overt advertising of, suddenly an advert for Tide washing powder pops up in the middle of our IM chat just won't work. So on the one hand, I'm not worried. On the other hand, I'm interested to see how they do it, because they could do it very cleverly.
Yeah, they absolutely could, but I think it's interesting you say about IM. One of the best IMs I've come across is, and this is exclusive to iOS users, but Apple's iMessages. Because what it does is the SMS application morphs if the phone knows that you're talking to an iOS device. So it's the same app, same features as SMS, but a bit more enhanced.
SMS is a bit of a dying thing now, isn't it? The number of people I know, even as recently as a year ago, that used SMS messages have they've all moved to WhatsApp.
Well, the way Apple do it by morphing it into the Messages app, when you're not really aware of the difference between the fact that it's an SMS or an iMessage. The nice thing about iMessages is, of course, they're free if you're on Wi-Fi and all that kind of thing. You can
but
send...
it's an Apple-only system. It just doesn't count.
No,
it can't count.
No, 100%. And I'm not saying it's the way forward. Or sorry, I'm not saying iMessages is the way forward. But something like iMessages is never going to give you adverts because it's Apple. So you don't have to worry about them leaking your data and whatever.
True.
So perhaps what Apple need to do is release iMessages on more platforms.
Well, yeah, and, that's certainly a possibility. But every time Apple has tried to release any piece of software for any platform that isn't Apple, it's been a flipping disaster.
Yeah, I have to say the reviews for Apple Music and Android are not particularly good, are they?
And iTunes, oh my goodness, that's the most confusing UI I've ever seen in my whole life on Windows, and it didn't work half the time.
Yes, they have tried, although I'm lying. Apple Music on Google Play, 3.5 stars out of 5. Is that good?
Pretty good for them. No, it's not really. I don't look at anything under a 4. Of course, we have 5 stars for this podcast.
We do. Thank you, listener.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Actually, I spoke to a colleague today who proudly told me that he listened to the show.
Good person. What was her name? Don't say anything.
I'm not saying anything.
Anonymity, privacy, you never know who's listening.
I'm just welcoming another listener.
Good for them. Okay. Techtasm.
You think?
It one? Do you know, I think it is. And I'll tell you why. Because I think IM is used so often by so many people at different points during the day that to advertise in there isn't going to work. If you look at WeChat, for example, in China, they offer incredible value-add services. So they're upselling things that people genuinely want. You've got to know what people want and allow them to explicitly pick it. Advertising is based on the principle that I'm telling you stuff you're not really thinking about at that time. Or if you are thinking about it at that time, it is the copy is owned by some agency which writes it in a very generic format. The way, in principle, making money out of something, I think, is important. You know, the dollar that you pay for WhatsApp is worth it. It's $1. And if they've got 1 billion users, that's $1 billion a year. Well, that's good enough. That is a business right there. So by giving it away free, of course, nothing's free. If you're not paying anything for it, they have to commercialize it in some other way. I just think that IM is so sensitive to overt commercialization. It's got to be done so sensitively and cleverly. I don't think it'll work. So I'm going to say WhatsApp, advertising in WhatsApp, Techtasm. Watch out, WhatsApp. You could disappear and evaporate. Of course, I will say, James, just to before I let you wrap up, I will say that they have got two instant messaging platforms, don't they, Facebook? Because they've got Facebook Messenger as well.
Yeah, they do. It would make sense for them to merge them. I think because of the acquisition, they've probably got two complete distinct teams that don't really have anything to do with each other. This is probably the first foray into that to share. And in the same way that Skype is very slowly working its way into Microsoft, I think the same thing will happen with WhatsApp. So.
Unfortunately, that is all we have time for this week, James. You can find us at facebook.com/Techtasm, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, or contact us at feedback@techtasm.com. Now, we normally record every Tuesday night, 2100 BST GMT, but we're not recording that time this week because of the holiday season and the Bahamian Evil Lair, which I visited last week. James is going to be on the road the next couple of the weeks, so the timing of the weekly show is going to be slightly different coming up, so watch out for when the show's coming. We're going to try and make one every week if we possibly can over the next 3 weeks while James completes his world tour. But in the meantime, please bear with us. This is me, Sir Robin Yellow.
And me, Mr. James Woodall.
Asking the question, is it real or is it just a Techtasm?